Would the one-handed swords from Skyrim work as actual swords? The Akaviri Sword and most of the other swords of the Blades are pretty much just katanas. The Falmer Sword is really interesting to me, and here's why. It's a chitinous sword, which is like bug exoskeleton, and chitin is approximately 1.3 grams per centimeter cubed in volume density, whatever. Steel is 7.85 grams per centimeter squared cubed. Anyway, so chitin is about 16% the equivalent weight of steel. This sword looks like it's pretty big, so about arming sword size. So like 3, maybe even 4 pounds.
If it were made of steel.
So using that size, the Falmer Sword would be about half a pound, which in sword terms is ridiculously light. Like the lightest that I know of in real life are some Chinese Dao, and they weigh about a pound. But what that means is this thing could be really quick. And bugs are surprisingly good at making efficient weapons, so I would not doubt that some giant cave bug would give a solid blade. And given that you could most likely just take the pieces off of a corpse and then slap them together with some natural glues and straps and all that, it would be incredibly economical. Yet again, Todd Howard gives us something perfect. Amrun's family sword and iron swords in general are pretty normal swordish things. They've got an obvious cross-section, the guard is solid. The hilt looks like it's a little too thin. I mean, that tang would have to be super tiny. Pretty much a rat tail tang, which isn't good, and it won't really hold in your hands, grip in your hands good. But barring that, the curve up on the pommel isn't exactly ideal. Since if your hand goes down, then it's just gonna jab into you there, which would be uncomfortable. And if you throw a cut, then that might also jab, depending on where your hand is holding the blade. So not the best. Bloodscythe is like this standard idea of a scimitar that we have in the mass media, but there's no sword that actually looks like this, aside from some European falchions. And seeing as how it's similar to some European falchions, it could definitely work as a sword. But it's not really what we would think it is. And scimitar isn't the best term, so don't use that. The Daedric Sword looks like something that you would find in a mall or in the collection of somebody who actually doesn't really know swords, but really likes cool swords. And I mean, it looks cool. Nothing against that. Aside from, again, the hilt being pretty small, the proportions actually aren't too bad. You've got a nice bit hanging down in front of the knuckles that offers some protection. And it's sharpened pretty much all along its length. The serrations wouldn't really be ideal because unless you're using a sawing motion, generally a solid cutting blade will cut through things better. Although it's used by demons, so they might actually be doing some sawing of meat with that. Anyway, another big issue is the thing that's along the back there. That would kind of catch when you're trying to cut through things because that looks like it's thicker and it's not a sharp blade. With the glass sword, if you made an entire sword out of glass or obsidian or something like that, then it would definitely be an effective sword once. Harkon's sword is another katana, but slightly different. The Imperial Sword, interestingly, has a touch of gladius in it, which is neat. So yeah, it would be effective as a sword. The lunar steel sword looks a lot like some Migration or Carolingian period swords, so it would also be effective. The orcish sword kind of looks like a Flamberge Yatagan, which is an interesting combination. And it would work. The silver sword looks like a solid longsword, although silver wouldn't be the best for swords because it's too soft and you couldn't really do too many sword things with it. At least not for an extended period of time. Thank you for watching, and which game sword should I cover next?